at 7:32 p.m. Meeting was called to order at 7:32 p.m. Members of the council, are there any amendments required to the agenda? And please let us know if you have any conflicts of interest for the agenda item, legislative action item.
No conflicts for me.
Hearing none, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Inyang, seconded by Councilmember Foe to approve the agenda as submitted. Is there any discussion of this motion? Council discussion? Are there any public comments on this motion?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
This is a motion for the agenda for the special legislative session.
That's correct.
Okay, that wasn't made clear from the start.
Well, I did call to order, and so the approval of the agenda is for the meeting that's in
Okay.
this
The reason
session.
I'm saying is we're having both a special ed and a work session tonight.
Understood. And the approval of the agenda in the work session is much more informal, of course, sir. Okay, no discussion from members of the additional discussion from council members or members of the public. I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Inyang.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia, I do not see in attendance. Councilmember Kellon.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 5-0. Are there any, moving along on the agenda, are there any public comments this evening? Hearing none. In fact, I don't think I see any members of the public in attendance. Oh, there's Ms. Katz is in attendance. Very good. Seeing no indications of public comments, move on to the legislative action item. A motion to adopt resolution 2023-R-15 regarding sidewalk cafe standards. Can we have a staff briefing on the motion, please, on the resolution?
Yes, Director Shelton.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the public. The town has received a request for a sidewalk cafe program to extend outdoor dining for one of our local restaurants to extend onto town-owned sidewalk and town-owned parking space. The Prince George's County requires, as part of their U&O process, that any business expanding their use and occupancy permit was required to have the owner's permission in order to expand into that area. And so this program would establish a process for which restaurant businesses would be able to enter into an agreement with the town for use of that space. The town has spoken about the proposed standards for the sidewalk cafe program on 5 previous mayor and council meetings, where we've brought up concerns about when the items such as chairs and tables and umbrellas would need to be brought in, and who would be responsible for maintaining these areas. We've also spoken about getting feedback from local businesses on the standards. The town did host information sessions, 2 information sessions in September. Was it September? Forgive me, I know we hosted 2. The dates are the specific dates are eluding me at the moment. Unfortunately, we didn't have anybody participate, but we did have businesses email questions and seek clarification through email outside of these information sessions. The guidelines have been and standards have been updated based on mayor and council feedback, and it is the staff's request that the mayor and council adopt resolution 2023-R-15 tonight to establish the sidewalk cafe program. And I'm happy to answer any other questions about the program, should the mayor and council have any.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Mr. Mayor, I believe you were speaking, but you're muted.
I hate it when that happens. Okay, so excuse me for that. So my statement was, are there any questions before someone can make a motion, or is someone ready to make a motion to approve resolution 2023-R-15?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
Director Shaw, appreciate the presentation. You mentioned that there were multiple instances for folks, for the public to get feedback. Were you able to connect with the Riverdale Park Business Association around this topic?
We were, yes. We sought feedback from the Riverdale Park Business Association on a couple of occasions, and they did speak to us about this program. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to propose a motion to adopt resolution 2023-R-15 for the purpose of establishing the Town of Riverdale Park Sidewalk Cafe Program in response to interest from local business owners.
Seconded.
Motion from Councilmember Inyang, seconded by Councilmember Foe to adopt resolution 2023-R-15. Is there just additional discussion of this motion?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead, Councilmember Lingua.
Thank you. Mr. Shelton, on a follow-up to Councilmember Inyang's question about your dialogue with the Riverdale Park Business Association. What input did they afford?
They primarily asked many clarifying questions, but there was no immediate concern, I guess, after those clarifying questions had been addressed. There were
Okay.
questions such as, for example, whether or not this would overrule any existing standards set by other jurisdictions, and the answer was no. This is not going to supersede anything like the LMUTC standards, for example. So the guidelines do state that the most strict guidelines apply, even if these are not the most strict.
Okay.
Councilmember
So-
Lingua, I can tell you that that I attended a meeting of the Riverdale Park Business Association where they were discussing these the draft at that time resolution, and there was quite a bit of discussion, but there was about and as Director Shelton said, there was quite a bit of sort of seeking clarification. They weren't sure of some items, but there was no real opposition to any of the items in the draft resolution at that time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure, Mr. Town Manager.
Now, I was doing the same thing, speaking while on mute. My apologies for that. I just wanted to add, and Mr. Shelton can correct me if I'm wrong on this. We are still waiting for a survey of the town center to see exactly where the town's rights of way are. How far back on the sidewalk, for example, our right of way extends. And we're going to have to go through an exercise wherever this program may apply to see exactly where rights of way are. But I do think it's good for the town to have such a program and to have standards in place to be responsive in a timely fashion to our businesses that want to utilize the town's rights of way.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. I think it's fairly likely that at least one of the businesses in our town center will be wanting to take advantage of this. I think there's significant town right of way that they would like to expand into. There are others that I think the survey will reveal, might reveal that they do not need to take advantage of this program, that in fact the sidewalk is essentially entirely in privately owned property. And there is some question about whether this might apply on Kenilworth, just south of Riverdale Road, that there's some businesses there that might also want to take advantage of this. And that might also be something that we need to have surveyed to verify exactly where the limits of the town's right of way are. But thank you for that that statement. Do you have any idea of when we might expect to have the results of that survey in?
I'm actually going to ask Director Lewis. Do you have a guesstimate from Benoni on when that may be complete?
We got a preliminary report, maybe another week before we get the final.
Great.
Okay. Well, as I said, then I think there's at least one business that is eager to move into that space, and I think there might be others that would want to. That an area that I believe will be impacted by this policy. The others are a little bit uncertain at this time. Any additional council discussion of this motion to approve resolution 2023-R-15? Are there any public comments on the motion to approve this resolution? Seeing no other comments, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye. Aye, excuse me.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Inyang.
Aye.
Has Councilmember Mejia arrived? Doesn't look like it. Councilmember Kellon.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you. We can go back to the main agenda. The next item on the agenda is new business. Are there any items of new business that on which, remember this, we are currently in the special legislative session, so this would be items of new business that might require action. Other items of new business should probably be under the work session agenda. No items of new business. Are there any items of unfinished business? It's sort of really odd. You know, I used to look back and forth on the council dais to see if anybody was leaning forward, but I look for unmuted microphones on the participants list now. So no one seems to have any unfinished business. So may I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Smith to adjourn. This is a motion that is neither discussed nor debated, so I'll move immediately to a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Inyang,
Aye.
Councilmember Kellon.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 5-0. We are adjourned at 7:46 p.m. We'll now move immediately into the work session agenda. Call that meeting to order at 7:46 p.m. This is a much less formal meeting, the one we just had. So we'll just move along through it. First of all, are there any items on the agenda that need to be altered or updated or moved? And does anyone have any conflicts of interest on items on the agenda?
I have none.
Very good. I'm trying to keep track of where I am. I might lose my place on this agenda. Hearing no need for changes, we'll move immediately on the agenda to the mayor's report. And I'm going to be a very short report and defer the rest of it for a few weeks. The only thing I'll say is that the COVID situation is a little bit murky right now. There are some indicators that things are getting worse, some that they are getting better, some that they're flattening out. The good news is that the new vaccine that I had predicted might show up at this time, has in fact been approved, has been available since sort of last Thursday, I think. And I encourage, as does the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, I encourage everyone over the age of 6 months, I assume those under 6 months can't understand me, encourage everyone over the age of 6 months to be vaccinated against this new variant. Just as every fall there's a new flu variant, and it's a good idea to get a flu booster. This vaccine targets the currently or recently circulating variants and appears to be quite effective against many of them, much more effective than the old vaccines. And so I encourage everyone to consider it. There's one statement that the World Health Organization, which was that anyone who has a high likelihood of a poor outcome, and that includes me, should seek any vaccine as quickly as possible. And I, in fact, have an appointment for this Friday afternoon. It was the first one I could get to receive the vaccine. So I encourage everyone else to, in consultation with their doctor and medical team, to consider getting this vaccine. And that concludes the mayor's report. Mr. Town Manager, would you like to present your report?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. A few items in no particular order. First, the work on the crosswalks at Queensbury and Rhode Island began this morning. Director Lewis, can you confirm whether or not they were completed today?
Actually, I saw confirmation at the end of the day from one of the team leaders and actually didn't get it, but I'm confident that they made good progress today.
Okay, and then
Just based on an earlier report from him.
Okay, and so if they weren't finished today, they will be finished tomorrow. And we are working internally to make sure that the scheduling of replacement in the future has a quick turnaround. So staff are addressing that internally and with our contractors. A few other items. If you haven't been by Rivertech Court, the installation of the flexible post have been installed. There's still work to do on the rubberized curbing and then painting and striping. But the installation of the flexible post went without incident. There's no traffic issues that have been observed by town staff. And I had reached out to College Park Academy late on Friday, and I didn't hear any complaints about how things went for Friday dismissal. We need to remember a few dates. So on the 21st, so this week, we're as part of our Hispanic Heritage Month, we have a movie night at Riverside Neighborhood Park. Ms. Barnes, do you want to mention what movie that is?
Certainly. We'll be showing the movie Encanto. It'll start at 7 o'clock. So we encourage everyone to come out and enjoy the great movie.
And this Saturday, the 23rd at 9:30, we have a walk and talk. And so we will gather in town center. And now that's weather permitting, depending on the source that you're looking at, anywhere between 40 and 70% chance of rain. So we'll make a call on Friday, whether or not to postpone. And a few other items. So the municipal center, current municipal center construction update. I mentioned last week the demolition had begun in Town Hall. And this week, demolitions occurring within the police department building. We did have a staff meeting with some representatives from the Purple Line. We met today to discuss the road that goes through the shopping center next to Casada, and the traffic concern that was reported by a resident where folks have to go south on Kenilworth and make a U-turn to go north on Kenilworth. And folks also are making, even though they shouldn't be, are making lefts when they're heading northbound and crossing traffic. So that dogleg type road, it had been open then closed. There's some design problems they ran into. There's a manhole cover that's was built, or the road was built in conflict with each other. So you have a pretty high lip there. So they're looking at what to do. What they did commit to us, and they're going to get back to us on the exact process and that, but they will open that road, and with the understanding that it will have to be periodically closed. So it may be open for a number of weeks, then closed, maybe open for a number of months and then closed, but they're going to get back to us with a schedule. The last thing I have is an update on the dog park, and I'm actually going to read the information so I have this correct. So from MNCPPC, in reference to the dog park and the ponding of water, we have encountered some electrical issues with the newly installed solar powered pump, and our team is currently working on it. The small dog area will stay closed until we fix the issue. We'll let you know once that's done. In order to minimize impact on the dog park users, we will continue to keep the large dog area open to the public. And with that, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my comments for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. I appreciate the updates. Really good news on the Purple Line road opening. That's I know that many residents in that area have been concerned. So that's good news. Any questions or comments for the Town Manager before we move on? Okay, seeing none, let's dive into the council committee and ward reports. I'll start with Councilmember Smith, Ward 1, and the Housing and Economic Development Committee. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are no updates from the Housing and Economic Development Committee yet, as it's 7 days old now. I apologize also for extremely short report tonight. I'm sure you're all disappointed, but it's been an insane week at work. And yes, I know I'm saying that on Monday. So I have seen the protected bike lane on River Tech Court. Looks great. Good to hear. As expected, there aren't any traffic issues.
Councilmember Smith, I can't hear you at this time.
Hello?
Can hear you now.
Okay. I wasn't saying anything of consequence. Just thanks for the updates, essentially. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Foe, Ward 2, and Legislative Committee.
Good evening, everyone. I don't necessarily know if they were completed, but the crosswalks added today on Queensberry and its intersections, they were drying them as I was leaving. It's great to see, white paint there to protect our pedestrians. It's just a drastic improvement in the space that it was much needed, and it's exciting to see. I was able to get an updated vaccine this afternoon at the Walgreens in Riverdale Park. I've contacted Paddock. They didn't have it, but they certainly anticipated having it later this week. And I imagine that CVS also has appointments as well. Being at a school and seeing the toll that it's already taken in the building with teachers, it makes me want to make sure that I protect myself, I protect my family. So please consider it if you're willing. And with that, I will yield the remainder of my time.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. Councilmember Lingua, Ward 3 and Finance Committee.
This report will be deferred till the next legislative session.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. Appreciate that. Councilmember Inyang, Ward 4 and Infrastructure and Public Works Committee.
Good evening. I think for one, I'm super excited to hear about the crosswalks. I think that's something that there are a few things that sort of rile up folks, and I think public safety is one of them, which as it should. And so it's good to see that we were able to get that moving forward. I've not been able to see the protected bike lane, but I've kind of been telling myself that I will see them as I use them on my bike. And so that's the motivation. I'll try to get out there tomorrow and take a look at them and experience them, but definitely excited that that went off, no major issues. And and hopefully the pickup and drop off have not been an issue for College Park Academy. And so, and then in terms of the committee updates, nothing further to update, but I will say I plan on reaching out at least an initial email to the committee. My only question was just around like what needs to be sort of publicized, and is it possible to like reach out and talk to committee members, or does it need to be its own official meeting in order to sort of reach out?
I will be happy to jump in. Well, first of all, if someone could send me a photo or two, I'm out of town right now, and if someone could send me a photo or two of the completed bike lanes, I would love to see it. I saw that it partway through, and so if you can slow down your bike enough to safely take a couple of photos, I'd appreciate it. So that's that. The meetings of these committees are absolutely subject to the Maryland Open Meetings Act, and so you need to announce them ideally a few days in advance, provide an agenda of what will be discussed, and ensure that the public has access, and additionally collect minutes. The minutes typically can be, the only requirements for the minutes is that any final decisions of the committee be recorded. Mr. Town Manager, you want to chime in on that particular topic?
I would like to, Mr. Mayor. I would also ask that when any committee chair is scheduling a meeting to reach out to Director Barnes and myself so we can make sure that the community is alerted to it through all of our normal platforms and advertising the agendas. And Director Barnes, how much time do you typically need information in advance of a meeting?
I try to have as much notice as possible. So announcing the meeting within a week and then having an agenda within a couple of days of the meeting is our typical standard for providing information to the community.
And that's all we had, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So I was speaking to the legal requirements. It sounds like the town is pushing a little bit beyond those, which I appreciate. But nevertheless, the Open Meetings Act completely is required. Compliance is required. And if you have any questions, then please reach out to me. I know more than I want to about the Open Meetings Act, and so can advise you on that. But also, as Town Manager said, if you contact staff a week in advance, then everything should be taken care of.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's the rest of my report.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Councilmember Mejia has arrived, so we're in Council Committee and Ward reports. Councilmember Mejia, Ward 5 and Community Affairs and Human Services Committee. And Councilmember Mejia, you're on mute if you are speaking.
Yes, I'm sorry, what you say again? You're talking about the committee?
Yes, we had committee appointments at the September 11th meeting, and you are chair of the Community Affairs and Human Services Committee. So we will be asking if you have any updates at each council meeting in the future. But if you don't, then just that's fine. Of course.
I don't at this moment.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And that brings us to Councilmember Kellon, Ward 6, and the Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness Committee. Councilmember Kellon, do you have a report?
Thank you, all of you, and I will commend the town manager and staff and the council member in that area for that Queenberry sidewalk construction. Because that place is my road all the time. I always pass over there. So I'm happy for the safety of the people. So for now, I yield my time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Kellon. That brings us to the end of council committee and ward reports. Let's move on to public comments. Are there any public comments this evening? Seeing none, I will move on to work session discussion items. First work session discussion items is the fiscal year 2024 revenue update.
Deputy Director Jones.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. Tonight's revenue report covers the month of July up to September 15th. We had missed the previous revenue comparison sheet, so this updated one includes the revenue from the month of July and through August up to September 15th. So the first major category that we have is local taxes. It includes real estate taxes, personal property tax, local income tax, and operating tax. Thus far, in fiscal year 2024, we have a total of $691,604.22. If you look at the previous 3 fiscal years from the same time period, in the previous fiscal year 2023, that total was just $274,783. Fiscal year 2022, the total was $1,001,539, and then fiscal year 2021, we had a total of $979,590. So for the current fiscal year, we are up a bit from the previous, but one thing I will mention is that at this point, well, last year, Prince George's County, which is line 4001 real estate taxes, it was billed out much later than the previous years. So if you look, you'll see that last year, the total was just 56,000, and the year before that, 573, and then 467. This year, it looks like we have received some of the real estate taxes, but not as much as we have in the previous year. But it still is an improvement from the last year. But by the time we get to October or November, where we receive the majority of the real estate taxes, we will see those numbers not have as much variance, because that's when we receive the majority of our real estate taxes. Personal property tax is another one that has a bit of variance. In the previous fiscal year, there was an update to the threshold, so that number was significantly lower than where we were in the past. But for the current fiscal year, we are actually at 233,000, which is pretty promising. And then for local income taxes, which we received from the state of Maryland, that's another one that has a bit of variance. So this far, from July to September 15th, we do expect to have some variance in the local taxes as a matter of just timing and when we receive these, but we don't see any issue with receiving any of the money that we have budgeted. The next major category is licenses and permits. This includes, your multifamily rental, single family building permits, business licenses, and parking permits. The total for the current fiscal year, up to September 15th, was 149,287. In the previous fiscal year, we were up a bit more at 180,000. Fiscal year 2022, we had a total of 144,000. So we've exceeded that number. And then fiscal year 2021, we were at 169,000. So not as much variance as in the local taxes, but we don't see any difficulty receiving any money there either. The next category is administrative fees, and this includes your abatement charges and municipal infractions. Currently at this point, the total is 1,850. Last year, we had a lot of code infractions, so that total was 9,100. For fiscal year 2022 and 2021, the total was $600 there. So again, our neighborhood service team is doing a great job ensuring that the code is being upheld, and we continue to monitor our administrative fees. The next category that we have is fines and forfeitures. This includes your police reports, vehicle impounds, and parking citations. For the current fiscal year, we have a total of 8,145. Previous fiscal year, it appears we're up a bit more in our police reports. Total is 11,065. We're still up more than fiscal year 2022. That total was 6,575. And fiscal year 2021 looks very close to where we are now at a total of 8,245. And the last major category that we have is safe speed for students, which includes your speed cameras. We have a total of 109,549. Fiscal year 2023 had a very similar number at 112,197. Fiscal year 2022 was a bit of an outlier there. We had a total of 154,000. And then fiscal year 2021 was similar to the current fiscal year and the last. We had a total of $109,880.25. So overall, at this point, our total for fiscal year 2024 up to September 15th, we have a total of 960,435. Previous fiscal year was 587,278. And then for fiscal year 2022 and 2021, we were up a bit more, again, in that real estate, the local taxes major category. We have received more real estate taxes than we had. Again, we attribute this to a timing thing rather than not receiving the revenue that we had budgeted. But we were up more with a total of 1,307,000 for fiscal year 2022, and 2021 we had a total of 1,268,000. So again, at this point, we are continuing to monitor our revenue very closely, but at this point, we don't have any concerns. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Are there questions from the council for the Deputy Director?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councilmember Inyang, go ahead.
Deputy Jones, could the person who's presenting scroll up a little bit to the right here. I understand sort of the variance between the taxes and sort of one year to the next in terms of just when they hit. But you mentioned that the licensing and permitting is not subject to the same. Do you have any insight in terms of like the multifamily rental licenses and like the disparity between this year and the previous year, or even like 4 years ago? It seems like, is it every other year there's a certain amount of that for like 20,000 or so difference? Is sort of my first question. I guess I'll let you answer that one first.
Yeah, so for the multifamily, it's still early in the fiscal year. We actually do anticipate billing out more multifamilies. We're not 100% finished with that. So for that particular line item and single families, I will say that that's kind of a bit of a timing thing as well. And we'll probably have a better idea by October, November to see exactly where we land.
And Mr. Jones, I'm sorry to interrupt. Mr. Shelton or Director Barnes, since you handle this directly, could you explain the 137 last year? I'm presuming it was because there was a sale.
Yeah, John, if I can jump in, we had one of the properties were sold and the people had to, the new company had to register their, had to register for a permit.
But the license was non-transferable.
Correct.
Okay. So that was an anomaly.
Yes, because you really won't see much variation, but if properties transfer mid-year, as Director Shelton just said, then it's a non-transferable license. And you may see some small variation because there may be a building that that wasn't rental that becomes rental and it has a number of units or something like that. So there could be some minor variation, but it's really going to be whether or not a property transfers.
Got it. That makes sense. Appreciate that. And then my other question was just around parking permits and the 187. I guess one, could someone remind me how much parking permits are? And then is the number of renewals, parking permits, I'm assuming, are every year. And so are the number of renewals or parking permits this year less or more than we expect? Is it on average? Are we expecting that number to increase or decrease or increase or stay the same moving forward?
As far as, at least from a revenue perspective, looking at the parking permits, it's been pretty consistent. I know for when we were doing the fiscal year 2020 and 2021, I know that when we had the whole pandemic situation, we didn't receive as much, but it's been pretty flat as far as revenue is concerned.
If I may add, Deputy Director Jones, we also, parking permits are on a 2-year cycle and each permit is $12.50 each. So we'll see a little bit of a decrease because of Madison Hill going from 4 permits to 2 permits. So that'll be a slight change. But in this fiscal year, we certainly expect that other areas may be added. So that will definitely change the amount of revenue received for permits, parking permits.
Thank you. I bring it up because I know a certain community with newly owned town roads are interested. And so curious on that number. And so I think I'll reach out to you and Town Manager Lestitian about what the process is for sort of starting that fun engagement. Those are all the questions I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Inyang. Are there additional council questions on the finance revenue update? Are there any public comments or questions on the revenue update? So I will just make one comment. I believe, I don't remember this exactly, I believe the county property tax bills, which went out in late June, early July, are not due until September 30th. And so a lot of the variance that Deputy Director Jones talked about is just because the income we've received is from people who paid early, and there's also an option to pay half of it at the end of September and half of it at the end of December. And so people who might choose to take those split payments would also impact exactly how the money rolls in during the course of the fall. So just wanted to point out that particular detail. And Deputy Director Jones, the operating tax line 4014, is that the same sort of thing that it's not due at this point? And so we expected a lot of fluctuation on when that arrives.
Correct, yeah. We're still awaiting those to be billed out. So that's why if you look, we're trying to make it more consistent, like for 2021 and 2022. They had already went out. For fiscal year 2023, they hadn't went out yet. So just trying to make things more consistent so we don't see as much variance moving forward. We're going to try and get those billed out around the same time each year moving forward.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, if there are no additional questions, then we can move on the agenda to work session discussion item 2, ordinance 2023-OR-11 regarding amendments to the personnel manual, Article O, workplace safety, section O-6, mandatory vaccinations.
And Mr. Mayor, since I started last week in Paul's absence, Paul's here this evening, but I'll just recap what I shared last week. And that is that the legal arena around mandatory vaccination programs has changed. And in consultation with Legit and their HR attorneys, staff are proposing that the effective period of this policy change, not that the policy go away, and it would be changed to be if there is a county, state, or federal COVID declared emergency. And the language does just that. So this was introduced at the last meeting, and then staff would like to present this to the council on October 2nd to be adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Are there council questions or comments on this this ordinance? Are there public questions or comments on this ordinance change? Okay, I view this as a housekeeping issue mostly, that we're trying to stay within keep our ordinances defensible in court. And so I think this is perfectly reasonable. And as has been said, we don't know exactly what the virus is going to come up with. And so we don't know if we'll have an emergency. We would rather have this policy in place should a county, state, or federal emergency be declared. So thank you for the update. Okay. Are there any, I guess I already asked for public comments, so let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a review of vision and commitment statements, housing and neighborhoods, and second, sustainability.
Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. And this item has been discussed for a couple of weeks now. These are the first 2 vision and commitment statements to be reviewed, housing and neighborhoods and sustainability. As discussed last week, staff have worked on getting some more community feedback. So we've done some social media posts, we've done some outreach to CCAR CDC, some emails out to on the town announced listserv. So we're working to solicit some feedback from not just our community stakeholders, but the residents as a whole. We did receive some fantastic feedback from the Sustainability Committee regarding the vision and commitment to sustainability. Before you tonight, you'll see the tracked changes version. It's also in your meeting materials. I can't upload a Word version to the website, so you don't get to see those changes, but this is probably the best way to see the changes that the Sustainability Committee is proposing for the vision and commitment to sustainability. And as we discussed, just overall with the process, the work sessions will be an opportunity to discuss some potential changes. We'll continue to receive input from the community and share that with the council at the work sessions, but the council will really make the determination on when these documents are ready to be adopted, whether it be the next month or all of them at the end. That's certainly up to the council, but this is our first piece of feedback, and this is our first opportunity to discuss these very important vision and commitment statements.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Can you slowly scroll through so we can read the changes? Okay, I've caught up. So scroll down a little bit. I'm told I read quickly. So leave a little bit of time for others. Okay, maybe another, keep that paragraph on screen, but scroll down a little bit more. Or is that the end? Okay. Okay, those changes look good to me. Any council comment on the changes?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilmember Inyang.
I appreciate the green team sort of feedback on this, and anytime you see the track changes, you can see the evolution in thinking and the verbiage choices, which I always appreciate. And maybe I'm lost in terms of the history behind sort of the appointment of the Sustainability Committee, also known as the Green Team. And it's good to see it sort of codified in something like this. I do wonder in terms of I wonder one, you know, the decision on sort of it being sort of volunteer based and sort of, you know, that being the framework in terms of how it's established. And then I guess two, just thinking as we go through all of these other you know, discussions and sort of for all the different other vision statements as well, if there would be a need for something analogous to a green team. And so maybe a quick history lesson for the, you know, was there a threshold that was met and that's the reason why we have this, or, you know, how do we get to that?
So I will recount what I remember from the history of the Green Team, is that the Maryland Sustainable Communities Program was created through a organization or an outreach of the University of Maryland, and all municipalities were invited in the state were invited to participate, and there were a certain structure of the program that was created initially as part of the Sustainable Communities Initiative. And part of that was to have a so-called Green Team, the Sustainability Committee, that would organize to submit the every 3 years application. I believe that's correct. And that this was generally viewed to be a volunteer committee, and they would more or less be documenting the actions of the town in terms of the application to the Sustainable Communities program. And the town would take many actions and be guided by the advice of the Sustainability Committee, but that there was not specific town ownership of the Sustainability Committee, that it was considered to be a volunteer effort. Does anyone else on the council or staff want to chime in on the history of the committee? Ms. Katz, you might, since you've been involved, I think you might be able to correct anything I said that was off by a little bit.
Mayor, you were oh so close. I mean, I would think good enough. It's Sustainable Maryland is the name of the program, and it is hosted at the University of Maryland through the Environmental Finance Center. And yes, it was back in 2014 when a current council member and an interested resident wanted to have the town of Riverdale Park participate in acquiring certification through this program, which does exist in other states as well. The current program manager came from New Jersey, and where the program was established there, and has brought it to Maryland, and it has been extremely successful since then. We have over 130 some municipalities in Maryland, and I think we've got close to 60% participation in the program now, either certified or pursuing certification. The town of Riverdale Park was certified in the very first year of the Sustainable Maryland program here. That was in 2014, and every 3 years, right on point, Mayor, every 3 years since, we need to recertify, because being sustainable is not a one and done kind of thing. And true, it's been called the Green Team here in town. It's been called the Sustainability Committee. At one point, it did have it always had a relationship where it was supported by the town and the council and mayor. So, but it has always been staffed by volunteers with consistent support, obviously, from the elected officials and the staff.
Thank you, Ms. Katz. Mr. Lusician, you wanted to chime in?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and this may have been said, I may have missed it, but I believe that the committee was actually created by a resolution adopted by the council.
Yes, I have a memory of that back in 2014.
I have that. Yeah, we have that document. Thank you.
I was going to ask Ms. Barnes, can you make sure that's sent out as a good historic reference for the entire council?
Certainly.
And Mr. Town Manager, just to stress, this part of this program is putting on a public website this certification application, all of the actions. And that resolution is part of our application. It is part of the history of our certification through the program. So all of that information is also available on sustainablemaryland.com.
Thank you, Ms. Katz. Councilmember Enyang, does that answer your questions about the Sustainability Committee?
It does. And I think the question about the resolution was a follow-up that I had. And so it's good to know that the question I have is mostly around how legally binding are these resolutions that we're talking about, or maybe not, maybe are they considered resolutions or statements of, it's the official word form.
So there's a resolution and an ordinance. This is not an ordinance, but a resolution, but it is,
Okay.
We are bound to the terms of it.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's great. And I definitely support everything that's in here as well. Just thinking about there may be opportunities for similar analogous green team efforts for others, some of the other resolutions that we'll be talking about over time. And so it's good for me to sort of understand what went into that and what does it make sense or not moving forward if we want to sort of include that. And so it seems that if that was some that feedback that we may get from the public or even on the council, that there's more to it than just sort of including it in a whereas, clause on a statement like this. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay. So just to put the vision and commitment statements as a whole in context, these are used by both town staff and by the council when considering all actions that have particular impacts, whether it's transportation, housing, sustainability, all of the different topics, and very often these have a lot of impact, particularly when we're trying to decide whether to endorse a piece of legislation, endorse a particular direction and policy. Then staff will refer to these vision and commitment statements as the official statement of policy and position taken by the council on a given topic. Are there any other questions or comments on the sustainability revision to the sustainability vision and commitment statement? Any additional public comments? Okay, let's move on to housing. Were any changes proposed to this vision and commitment statement, or is it being presented as is?
Mayor Thompson, it's being presented as is. We haven't received any specific input on this vision or commitment statement.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Director Barnes, you did send this along with others as recommended by Councilmember Lingua last week over to CCAR. And unless the mayor and council have changes to direct, Mr. Mayor, you may want to just put this on the agenda again for October 2nd to allow CCAR an opportunity to weigh in.
For discussion, but not for approval and adoption, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, any council feedback on this this vision and commitment statement?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead, Councilmember Yang.
I'm trying to, we don't mention affordability, right, anywhere here. I believe so. We talk about sort of safety, inclusive, safe, pride, community, identity, cleanliness, maintain, but we don't, there's no mention of like affordability or anything like that. Is that intentional, or is there an opportunity? I think of, if we weren't building any more houses, then the way this reads as is perfectly fine. But as we think of, as new housing construction happens, is there a statement here that should be considered around, I don't think we necessarily need to go down to like market rate versus like affordable housing, but something around the lines of the economics around housing, if that's something that I think is missing from the statement.
Mr. Town Manager, I saw your microphone was unmuted. I'll let you speak if you wish to. I think, go ahead.
So and correct me if I'm wrong, Director Barnes, but I think this was the very first vision and commitment statement that we presented to the council, and the council had some edits to it. As an affordable housing person, I would suggest that Councilmember Inyang's recommendation to add an affordability component is proper for the town, especially as we have seen prices rise over the course of the last 6 years. And I know that in the various presentations over the last several years, I've spoken on affordability issues, and I know I've heard from the council, previous councils, and members of the current council, that affordability is a concern in the town. So I just offer that little bit of history, and Mr. Jones and Mr. Shelton, Mr. Smith and I, we watch the valuation of properties. And we do that as part of our budget process. And we see the increases that are happening. Mr. Shelton's operation inspects properties for code issues, but then sees the conditions of housing and the amount of rents being charged. There's definitely affordability concerns throughout the town.
Yeah, I appreciate, I agree. I think there's an element of, I don't know what the legal language should be. If I'm sure a lot of these terms have very specific meaning, but something that talks about sort of like price sensitivity. If this is a vision that, we envision a community that, that isn't going to price out members of its current community. haphazardly, right? And so being at least like aware of that and sort of putting that, I think, in paper and in writing would be, I think, a worthwhile addition to this document.
Thank you, Councilmember Inyang. If the person controlling the screen, oh, Ms. Katz, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just thinking about this as I'm looking at this more closely, this particular one. And it's interesting to me, these visions and commitment statements. I like the way they overlap. Sustainability, the word sustainability is mentioned in this one, for example. The word historic is mentioned in this one. We don't have, I don't think there is a vision and commitment statement for the historic aspects of our town, but it's mentioned in this one. And based on what Councilmember Inyang was, where he was headed with his thing, I wanted to maybe build on that. And I've always had a vision that with regards to affordability of housing, that people that work here can afford to live here, because that also supports sustainability, where you don't have to travel from where you live to where you work. And even housing that's built here, if some of it is devoted towards certain percentage that goes to emergency management professionals, teachers, other professions that are in our town, things like that, to me, is a vision of value. To me, these visions are about values, our town's values, and not necessarily delineating exactly what a regulation would be or anything like that. I think these are broader, but yet I think this one could use a little more specifics in general to allow, to give the tool that it's intended to be for staff and for others to know what our town values. So that's to consider both that affordability piece, that historic piece, and the sustainability piece. I just got to throw in again, which goes in line with the vision and commitment for sustainability, which is to apply that vision statement to everything else we do. Is it would be great if this one could also have something about our housing and neighborhoods being as efficient as possible in their use of natural resources, in the preservation of our communities for perpetuity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Katz. Any additional council or public comment on this before I speak up?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I want to ask the housing committee concerning the leaseholders of the apartment complex. If they have any knowledge from these leaseholders when they are increasing the rents without consulting the housing committee. That's my biggest question. We're talking about the safety and the health of the residents and the neighborhood, but these leaseholders, many parts of Riverdale or wherever, any PG, they increase rent. I don't know whether the housing committee, they know about it or not. That's my question.
So I'm considering answers to your questions. Councilmember, excuse me, Mr. Town Manager, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The town does not govern rent increases or control rent increases. The county has some legislation regarding increases in rent. There's state law about leases, but it's not something that the town governs.
So the town has no business with these leaseholders.
We do have quite a bit of business with the leaseholders in that we inspect them and the property owners. The leaseholders, we represent and advocate for them, and there there, in fact, were many activities that the town engaged in the last year to inform many leaseholders of their rights under the county legislation, and that town manager spoke of. But we, as the town manager said, we do not directly regulate the rents, and so we are somewhat of an intermediary on that. And in terms of the vision and commitment statement, I'm trying to think of whether we could insert some language about seeking to have the neighborhoods be stable, because of course things like sudden rent increases impact the stability of a neighborhood. So people, if their rent is increased too quickly, will suddenly find that they have to move out. That will lead to high turnover, but I think that of residents, and I think that that is a vision that we could have, is that we would have a good level of stability, appropriate level of stability in the neighborhoods. So that would be going to this. In terms of your fundamental question about the current situation, as I said, we have sought to be an intermediary and inform residents of their rights under the county legislation, but that is not regulated by the town at this time.
Yeah, because why I'm asking this question, I know a lot of people have move out because of the high rent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of them, they are evicting some of them. So this is that's why I'm asking this question, because if the rent is going up every year, not every year, like maybe like 2 times for the year, they put the rent up. How the people gonna cope with this? That's why I'm saying. So if there's any way they can help the residents about this, is good. Because if we have a lot of people in the apartment complex, that will bring some taxpayers. That's why I asked this question.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Of course, and I believe that Councilmember Inyang's statement that we need to make the support for affordable housing sort of implies that there would not be the constant enormous increases in rent that we've been seeing for the last few years. Councilmember Lingua, your microphone is open. Do you wish to speak?
In terms of what language we could add, essentially, I think what we're looking to be in the position to do is to be a champion for the residents before the state and the county regarding any type of housing legislation or landlord-tenant relations adjustment, so that whatever is proposed and is balanced and fair and within reason for residents living here that are living in essentially commercial rental properties. I mean, essentially, any of these buildings that we have in our town, these are commercial property. These are private enterprises, unless they're condos in which they're paying condos fees, and it's a cooperative living arrangement among those residents living in that building. You're looking at essentially individual, separate commercial arrangements for living space between residents in the town and those property owners in town. So it's a matter of trying to capture language that's going to demonstrate that between the two. I mean, I think what we're trying to say with affordable housing is that, the mayor and council, in conjunction with staff, will for lack of a better term, like I've said before, champion those rights of the residents living in these on these properties, as well as being a, gosh, I'm trying to find a term here. A fair and balanced arbitrator with the property owner in regards to the tenant, so that residents are able to live in, continue living in these places and not be priced out, while at the same time making sure that the property owner is able to address any upkeep, maintenance, or other incurring issues with their property, in a way that's not going to essentially take advantage of the residents there in a malevolent way.
So basically what you're saying, Councilmember, is that we need to put language in that recognizes that balances the need for affordable housing with encouraging investment and reinvestment in properties by property owners.
Yeah,
And
it's essentially, yes. It's something where it's like, we're going to work to to stick up for tenants, because because essentially that's, the residents are, they're tenants of someone who owns this property. And I think we need to be able to work with that property owner to help them provide a domiciles that essentially bring a quality of life that we that we feel as a municipality is acceptable based on what we have set down with the property code that we've passed, holding them to that. Yet as we're holding them to that, being also a constructive partner with them. So it's not so much an arrangement where it's like, hey, you need to get this done, I'm telling you, and then we walk away from it. Where in a sense we need it to be something like an arrangement where it's like, look, we're seeing that you're having issues with this. How can we help you, address these issues? We want to help you address these issues for your sake, and but most of all for the sake of the resident that you have living in there.
sure,
And
and
hopefully
in
Go
the
ahead, I'm sorry.
discussions we've had with developers in the past about including a mix of affordable units in proposed apartment buildings, for instance, then there's always a little bit of give and take that, we might support a little bit higher density versus in order to enable the affordable housing while still maintaining the investment. So so agree that there is some balance that needs to be placed in here, and it's it's a balance that, as you say, balances access to affordable housing with ensuring that the affordable housing is actually created. So, a hardline policy on, affordability, that all new housing might need to be affordable would not allow investment to occur. So there's, as with everything in municipal government, balance is required. And so I think that staff can move with what we suggested this evening and perhaps update the statement and provide us with new language in the future, at a future meeting. Councilmember Inyang, your hand is up, please.
Yes, I'll be quick. The only thing that wasn't there that I just remembered too, as I looked through my notes, was around conversations about density. And I'm thinking about, like, I think Montgomery County, like, going out and actually talking about or mandating, the idea of sort of higher density, apartment dwellings and stuff. I think as we go through another revision on this, I think we should have at least a conversation about, what does it mean about our values and visions for how the amount of density in terms of the housing, right? We could have, like, we could say we only want single family homes, and that's sort of like the vision that we have for, Riverdale Park moving forward. And I think that would be out of step with the reality, especially with a lot of our sustainability goals. And so to Ms. Katz's point about being a little bit more specific in terms of this, I think there are areas where we allude to it in terms of healthy, sustainable, environmentally friendly. But is there more about the actual types of buildings? Maybe if it's, I don't know if we've thought through in terms of, hey, in certain areas we want more versus others. If we have an opportunity to sort of do something like this, I think it'd be worthwhile to at least have it in there and it's worthy for discussion. Thank you.
Sure. I think we don't want to get super specific in the vision and commitment statements, but agree that we can certainly look at including more information about density in the statement, see if we can fit it in without limiting ourselves and future councils too much in the future. If we say that we put in the vision and commitment statement that in the making this address up 7500 block of Riverdale Road, we want to have no more than, apartment buildings that are between 4 and 6 stories. Well, that level of specificity probably doesn't belong in a document like this, but certainly we can say that we support certain levels of density. One of the areas that I think was in the current statement that was addressing that issue was in preserving the character of neighborhoods. And so when you change something over from being single family to multifamily higher density, then it can change the character. And so it's something to consider if there's a proposal to do that, and that the character of the neighborhood would change. But we can certainly, see if we can find more specific language to put into this statement. I'm going to read what Ms. Katz put into the chat. She put, consider that affordable utilities also contribute to affordable housing. To me, this translates to encouraging energy efficient construction, energy, water use, solar, as well as helping existing developments take advantage of programs to increase their buildings' efficiencies. So I think that that we could put that in here. I think that fits. Additional thoughts from the council or members of the public? So just ducking back to what I was going to say a little while earlier, if we could scroll up just a little bit in the document, there's a statement of the very first whereas housing and neighborhoods need to be welcoming, safe, and inclusive. And for later on, where diversity is a shared and celebrated value, and the inclusivity and diversity statements always imply to me affordable housing, but I do support the idea of putting it in more explicitly, because of course you can't have economic diversity without affordable housing. But as you say, we can definitely be more explicit on that. And I believe when this was originally adopted that the affordability was not as big of an issue, and so perhaps it wasn't addressed explicitly at that time. But it's a big issue now, so worth addressing. Additional comments on this statement? Mr. Town Manager, do you have enough direction from the council to be able to provide a later draft?
I think we do, sir. So we will work to make the amendments. We'll provide a redlined version at an upcoming meeting.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing else on discussion item 3, let's move on to discussion item 4. Letter to Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission regarding reforestation of their properties. I brought this up at last week's meeting as a possible topic, a possible action of the council, and asked for the council members to think about it. Has anyone thought about it? Have any additional input at this time?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
The one thought I had is a time ago, Park and Planning was engaged by or engaged. I wasn't sure who initiated the project idea by the Washington Region Council of Government. And they did, because the Council of Government, the Washington Regional Council of Governments had a program of trees, planting trees by the riverside. At least that was the name of it. And they had some, they put in a bunch of small saplings in town here, and they just kind of grew or didn't, or just kind of became these areas that really Park and Planning really just kind of let be. I think if we're going to talk with them about that, I think one of the issues to bring up with them is this program, the state of this program on various park properties, and do they have a plan to address these plots so that they can thrive, and that so that something does come of them, because it seems, for at least some of the ones that I've seen, be it close to home or in other places, the states, the conditions vary. So I think that's one thing that we can ask them of regarding. As well as when the other thing I would be asking of them is, when it comes to the type of trees that they're planting, I know people want to plant something that's native to the area, but yet these habitat envelopes for trees, where it's ideal for them to grow and thrive, are changing, and they're changing rapidly. And what may not have been native here, say 30, 40 years ago, would be now. And maybe for the next century, if not more. So are they prepared for that as well? Is that something that they're taking into consideration?
Mhm. So just to recap my ideas on this letter, this was based on research that the best way to or a way that maximally improves or impacts, prevents, trying to find the right word here, maximally prevents further climate change issues, is good for absorbing the most carbon, is to allow existing scraps of forest to expand into cleared areas. And the program that I believe you were referring to was in recreational areas. I remember there's one park in Ward 3 where they had a little patch. And my memory is that it wasn't immediately adjacent to an existing surviving stand of trees, but was sort of in the middle of an open field. And they more or less just ceased to perform maintenance on that area in hopes that the forest would regrow. Is that the sort of program you're talking about, Councilmember?
That's the program they had. They had one there. They had another one over by gosh, the time that was Ward 4. Right there near along the northeast branch where the run comes in from east of town.
Mhm.
And that just kind of, they started something, but then it fizzled. It was never really maintained at all.
Okay.
The ones that I'm seeing around here, just, they aren't maintained. Unless folks are coming out wanting to do it on their own, residents coming out and doing it on their own.
Sure,
Which,
sure.
they threw a lot of money into this project, and they really didn't have a plan on how to be stewards to it. And I
Mhm.
think that's just what it is. It's like, how, are you planning to seriously take on the role of being stewards of these forests, or
Mhm.
of these trees that you're going to plant? And I think that's what we need to be asking of park and planning. It's all wonderful and great that they want to provide park space for people to enjoy and to come to and gather and spend their time in leisure that way. Great, but you're going to need to be better stewards when it comes to the trees in your park, so that you have a thriving, functional canopy that's going to be effective for a number of things, be that for water retention, be that for, as part of a larger reforestation program within the county and the state, as well as, the fact of being a destination for folks to come and be able to recreate and spend
Mhm.
time with friends and family.
Mhm. So just to put the or to clarify my thoughts, there are significant areas under MNC PPC control, particularly along the banks of the Patuxent are the areas that I've been looking at. There's some other areas that are interior and South County, also sort of in the rural tier that are significant areas. And there's almost there's not like almost none. There's very little access for recreation. There may be some trails, hiking trails that are through there, but it's mostly just forest. And then slicing up these areas, there are areas that are being used for agriculture. And some of these properties, I looked at just one in particular, and the property was around 300 acres, I think, according to PG Atlas. and about half of it was being used for agricultural purposes, and the other half was absolutely just forested area. And I certainly couldn't find any indications that there were trails or campsites or anything going on in there. There may have been on the very edge of it a few picnic tables or something like that. And given that the town of Riverdale Park, the entire town is 1,200, 1,300 acres, then the fact that there are 125 acres or 150 acres in that one section of MNC PPC land that could be allowed to reforest just seemed like a really good idea, a really good thing to do. And there was adjacent forest that could grow into that area. And my vision is that, at least in the short term, there wouldn't be a recreational use for that, that it might be after the regrowth has happened, after the forests have expanded into the agricultural uses, that there might be some future recreational use. But for the moment, and for the next many years, the goal would be to address climate change by allowing the reforestation and increase the tree canopy of the county. So that's what I was thinking, but this is a letter. If we're writing this letter, it's going to come from the entire council. So we should continue discussing it. Do you have any thoughts on?
Well,
what
I agree with that. It's, as long as they're going to really be making, I just feel like, in a sense, we're asking Park and Plain to essentially reorient their mission.
Maybe. I mean, I was speaking to someone recently, and that person said that a major part of the MNC PPC mission when they were created was the preservation of the riparian zones, the areas next to waterways. And I think that having the riparian zones being, transitional from agricultural use to forest improves the water quality and improves the water quantity going in there. And so it may be that we are just asking them to reconsider one of their original missions and whether their current policy is consistent with it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, but I think we're saying the same thing here. We want them to consider that. We want them to do that. We want them, it's they have it down on paper, but it seems they may have strayed away from it, or else they're not putting as much resources into that. Being that they're directing resources more towards recreating activity.
Okay. Mr. Town Manager, do you think that there's enough of a consensus here that staff could work on a letter, and I can work with staff as needed to generate a draft letter? I would assume this would be for the work session at the end of October. There's not, as I said, there's not there is a burning need, but it's not something that a month is going to make a difference on. So do you think you have enough direction at this time?
I believe so, Mr. Mayor, and I sitting here typing some notes on that, and one of the things that staff would like to check is what MNCPPC's current policy is as it relates to forestation and reforestation, and and we can provide that to the council through an email update after we get their current policy. But I think we can start drafting that letter.
Okay. So why is it acceptable to the council to bring this up again at the October work session?
Fine by me.
Okay, so let's plan that, and we'll hopefully see some progress in between now and then. Any additional public or council comments on this? Ms. Katz?
Yes, Mayor Thompson, thank you so much for bringing this forward. This sounds fantastic. I actually have a lot of thoughts that I won't share here and now. Maybe I'll put them in a message to you and maybe the town manager, just regarding things like the ecology of increasing the tree canopy. You know, there's other details here. There's a bigger holistic picture, not just increasing the tree canopy, but we need more meadows, we need more wetlands as well, to have the whole system be healthy. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention quickly is backtrack to the housing and neighborhoods. That's one thing that is not in that either, is, you know, is the vision for tree-lined streets, is the vision for taking advantage in our neighborhoods of adding as much green as we can. So all these things once again fit together because, you know, it's one big blob of life that we're trying to manage here in our town. So thank you.
Of course, can you provide your comments on the housing to through the Sustainability Committee, of course, get a stamp from them and provide them.
All right,
Thanks.
all right. Sure, thank you.
Okay, if there are any additional council comments? Councilman Relinqua, I see your microphone is still on. Did you want to have another comment or ready to move on to item 5?
Let's move on.
Okay.
We've talked this to death, so.
Okay. Discussion item 5, Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission Annual Budget Forums, October 4th and October 17th, 2023. There was a document. Looks like we can get that up on screen, which are topics that we have requested be addressed as part of the budget process, MNCPPC budget process. Is the list still in this document? Our previous requests? Yes. Okay. Any discussion of the list of capital improvement projects to be discussed with MNCPPC during their budget hearings? Council?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilmember Yang.
the 9 Ponds project, is that part of the county or is that?
The 9 Pond project is part of county stormwater management, which is under town manager Listich can correct me if I'm correct. It's under the public works in the county. Is that correct?
I do believe it's under DPW&T in
Right.
terms of its ongoing maintenance.
So I'm always a little bit confused as who in the county has oversight on that, because it seems to shift a little bit. But yes, that's a county project and not an MNCPPC project.
Yes, just good. Thank you. I appreciate that. The rest of the list looks good to me. I appreciate putting whoever put it together.
Okay. Any additional council discussion of the list? Whether anything needs to be added or removed or the order changed? For item 6, the sidewalk, are we asking MNCPPC to foot the bill for putting the sidewalk in, or just to allow us to put a sidewalk in? Mr. Town Manager?
From a staff perspective, sir, I think we'd be asking them to do it, and then a plan B would do a cost share. The sidewalk along there would be very complicated in that there'd have to be a retaining wall. So perhaps it could be a shared project where the town handles the sidewalk, but they handle the grading and the retaining wall. Because it will be a couple $100,000 in retaining wall work.
Yeah, that my memory is that it was a technically demanding project along there, so understood. Councilmember Lingua.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I think Plan B needs to be our Plan A on this, and that it's a shared project that we work in conjunction with Park and Planning. Because more than likely, this is going to be something where sidewalk is going to be akin to what happened on 48th Avenue, where in some places there's going to be bump outs, and it's going to narrow the road somewhat. Perhaps not as much as what happened on 48th, but some, possibly right around that area where that retaining wall would be. But I think it's something. It's not that we're asking them on their own to do it, but essentially to, impress upon them the importance that we place having a sidewalk along that side, is that, we'd be able to work with them and share in resources and getting it built.
Okay, so perhaps we can adjust the language in the letter to reflect that. I believe that the town manager and you wearing your finance committee chair hat would hope that MNC PPC would provide a lot of the funding for the grading work, since that will be pretty expensive, as was explained by the town manager. But certainly we can assist them in any way possible.
Look for grants or other types of monies that would be available for projects like this.
Mhm.
Anything we can do.
Of course.
But it's a street sorely in need of a sidewalk.
Okay. So, Mr. Town Manager, if I could ask a favor of staff, which is in one of these documents, I see item 4, for instance, the Riverdale Community Park is identified as being on 51st Avenue, and there are many similarly named parks. And if staff could put cross streets or nearby intersections to disambiguate them, I would really appreciate that.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and because staff have the same issue, and actually perhaps the town at some point could consider recommending some name changes to MNC PPC to more easily differentiate between the parks. And may I add one additional item, Mr. Mayor? Director Barnes noted that we left the backstop off. Is that what you mentioned, Ms. Barnes? Yes. And can you go ahead, Jessica?
I was just noting that the backstop was specifically discussed at the meeting, at the last meeting. The only problem we had was finding consistency in the language used to describe the portion of the backstop. There was the hood or the canopy, but I think we can work that in there as requested by Councilman Lingua.
Okay, very good. So if we could, go ahead, Councilmember Lingua.
Yes, my apologies. Saw some of those folks tonight, and one of the things they're also asking about was extension of the fence along the first base side.
So improvements to the baseball diamond overall. List of
the
details.
fencing around along the first base side and behind home plate, with home plate to include on top of the backstop, a canopy, a vestibule. I don't know what the term is. I want to say vestibule, but I don't think that's right. But anyway.
Okay. I guess if we could have this appear as a resolution for the October 2nd meeting, then it could be adopted at that time, and we could present it to MNC PPC in advance of their October 4th meeting and could be discussed.
Mr. Mayor, that just real quick, the point about the name changing, is that something that I think should be actually included on the list? And I don't know if it's like we just say we keep it open, or say that like we would like to have some input in the community, maybe having some input into naming the parks, because we're Riverdale Park with multiple parks called Community Park, Neighborhood Park. It's just like Riverdale Park. It is kind of an opportunity for branding. I'll keep it positive.
I think we might give them a heads up. This is a budget hearing, and renaming would not be, a budgetary issue necessarily. I mean, there'd be some, but not an enormous budgetary impact. But I think giving them a heads up and taking that on as a council project would be a really good idea.
Thank you.
Okay, so sounds like we have a pretty good list. There'll be the one item involving baseball diamond improvements, and we can have a document in October to endorse and take forward into the hearings. Any additional discussion? Any public comments? Okay, it's looking pretty quiet. So next item on the agenda is minutes. I keep repeating myself on this. Please check over the minutes, make sure that what you said is what's recorded, because 5 years from now, someone will pull them out and say, well, you said this at this meeting, and you want to be sure that it is what you said at that meeting, because amending them at that time is a little bit painful, awkward, as they say. So let's move on to unfinished business, Riverdale Park Community and Municipal Center Project, 6601 Baltimore Avenue. I do not have any updates from last week. Does staff have any updates?
No updates in the last week, sir. Except for those who have not contacted Director Barnes with their preference for either a Thursday or a Friday at 5:30, so we can get the tour scheduled. So those members of council who have not contacted Jessica, if they could do that, that would be helpful.
I will add that to my to-do list because I haven't done it myself. So thank you for the reminder, Mr. Town Manager. Okay, let's move into new business. The first item under new business, state bond bills for the 2024 legislative session. I met with several other mayors and Senator Alonzo Washington last week, and he said that the bond bills will be due around January 1st. I assume he honestly meant January 2nd, since not much happens on January 1st. And that they're looking for shovel-ready projects. And my understanding with discussions of this with the town manager is that staff are working on some items, and we'll be seeing them sometime in October, perhaps at the work session. But if anyone has any ideas, then please bring them forward. And Senator Washington emphasized that he's looking for shovel-ready projects, or if we're asking for design assistance, then it's okay for that. But we would like something that would be done quickly and not hang around for many years. And so please think about projects and provide them to staff, and we can decide what we might ask for at the end of December. Any questions or comments from council? Councilmember Inyang, go ahead.
When you say shovel-ready projects, could you give like an example of like, so these are different than sort of CIP projects. This is projects that we were going to do, but we're waiting for state funding that may be ready, or like I'm thinking of like the Plummer Park work that at some point needs to be done. Does that qualify, or is there certain area in terms of what type of projects he's thinking about?
So the plumber, I guess the Plumber Park project would sort of be on the thin edge right now, because I think we have a fundamental design, but I think that he would find it ideal if we actually had at least significant engineering done, so that he could be sure that if the money came through, that it would be, construction would start within, 6 months or so after the money got into our hands. So that's what I'm thinking that he means by shovel ready. And at times in the past, then we've had projects that required a significant amount of design and preparation, and so we have not actually started doing that. And I think he's just looking for more immediate projects than has happened in the past. Mr. Town Manager?
I would concur with what you're saying there, Mr. Mayor, and I would simply add projects that if there are permits required, permits are in hand. So you're not getting tied up in a years long permit process with the county. So the one thing that the staff are doing is we're reviewing current projects where we may have some funding gaps, and bringing those to the mayor and council was a larger update and for consideration for bond bill application.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your questions, Councilmember Yang?
Yeah, permits in hand. Okay, yeah, I'm more curious. Yeah, what is the list? That seems like that's a pretty narrowing list. So I think whatever you come up with would be really appreciated.
Okay. Any additional council questions or public questions or comments? Okay, we'll see more of that next month. Last item under new business on the agenda anyway. This was a little bit of a surprise to me. I found out at this meeting with Senator Washington that other municipalities who shall remain unnamed, but we all know them. They're all in District 22. Have for many years had legislative dinners sometime in December, where they invite the legislative team to come and talk to the council and staff of their particular municipality. And given that there are 7 municipalities in District 22, then Senator Washington expressed a desire to consolidate these meetings into one. So basically have a single district-wide legislative dinner. PGCMA has a legislative dinner that I attended last year, have attended in the past, where I felt like the number of people there versus the number of legislators made it difficult to communicate much, to discuss much about what priorities were in the legislative session. And so this sounds like a more reasonable sized event, and that we might want to coordinate with the other municipalities to provide the dinner. The idea of the meeting would be we would get together. Each municipality would have some time to present their priorities and provide written materials to the legislative team. And the meeting would of course be a public meeting, so members of the public could attend, but the focus would be on the municipalities presenting and the legislators listening and providing feedback on the suggestions. So just wanted to bring this up, see if there are any thoughts that the council had. I would like to move forward with identifying possible funding and coordinating with other municipalities to schedule this event. And the proposed time from Senator Washington was the Tuesday after the Thanksgiving weekend. So any thoughts? Councilmember Yang, you are unmuted.
I think it's a great idea. Curious that this is, it seemed like it's either been happening and we haven't been invited, or or someone's thinking about it for the first time. Either way, I think it's a great idea. I won't be around that week, but either way, I think it's still important that we get this in hand, and it'd be great to lay the groundwork, even of like, corresponding with the various municipalities and seeing if there's any overlap, and if there are opportunities to say, not just we support this, but hey, 5 of the 6 other municipalities will support that too, just so that dinner can be even more focused in on, this is what the overlap is, and then these are the outliers for each individual municipality. And I think that'd be a great idea. I'm fully supportive of it.
Okay, I plan in the regular meetings I have with the mayors in the county to discuss that, and we may have some focused meetings to try to organize that. And in regards to the question of, has this been happening and we're not invited? It's not been happening coordinated with multiple municipalities. I will out one of the municipalities. So apparently the city of Greenbelt has had such a meeting regularly. And the meeting goes on from for many hours, perhaps 5:30 in the afternoon until almost 10 o'clock at night. And they have presented what Senator Washington described as a 66-page presentation on legislative priorities from the city of Greenbelt. But this was organized as an event only with the city of Greenbelt. And so if we had been looking at their announcement of public hearings, we would have picked up on it and could have shown up and provided at least some input, depending on what we would be attending purely as members of the public. But this was an attempt by Senator Washington to coordinate us as municipalities, and to also try to be less of an impact on the legislative team's time. Because if you have 7 days in December where you're spending 4 or 5 hours talking to each of your municipalities on each of those days, then that adds up to a lot of time just in advance of the legislative session.
Makes sense.
Okay, we will move forward on that, and I'll keep you informed as we make progress. So we are done with everything on the agenda. Does anyone have any items? I guess I should have asked for other items of unfinished business earlier, but does anyone have any other items to discuss?
I just know I have a question around, I know we received an email from a resident around the Capital Bike Share stations, and I guess the lack thereof in terms of their inclusion since like October 2021. And I remember that was also a topic on the neighborhood National Night Out. There was pointed out to me, hey, this is where the bike share station should be, and it's not. I don't know if that's something that should be added to the. I believe that I don't know who the organization is. It's, he mentioned just the county. I don't know if that's MMPC or if that's someone different. But what is our mechanism for sort of following through on, legislative items that have fallen through the cracks is a question that I have. I don't know if that's a question I have, that maybe it's new business or maybe it's a simple explanation.
Mr. Town Manager, I saw you were unmuted. Do you have a input on this?
A little. We saw the email earlier today. It is the county that is coordinating the Capital Bike Share Program, not MNCPPC. Director Chelton, I know you'd given me a response earlier. Can you brief the council on what your understanding is and whether you've gotten any further update from the county today?
I have reached out again to the county today, but I have not received an update. The last time I spoke with Stephanie Walder from the Department of Public Works Transportation was June 22nd, where she told me that we are on the list of Capital Bike Share stations that will be installed, but the county has limited funding for these stations. And as they acquire more funding each year, they are installing more stations. I asked for an update today to see if there's any more news about when we might be able to expect our station, but I haven't heard back yet. So I'll definitely share that update as soon as possible.
Thank you, Director Chilton. Councilmember Lingua?
Do these count as shovel-ready projects?
Well, it's not our project, but I don't know what the status is. I don't know if the county has permits from themselves to put a bike share station in.
I don't know. I find that, the term shovel-ready in Prince George's County is, I don't know if it's an oxymoron or a misnomer, but
I had the same thought. I was trying to think of a project that you would have permits in hand for, but not have money for.
yeah. Yeah, so. I mean, we have plenty of projects, but it's just getting county to act on them is it's a whole nother ballgame.
Mhm. Yeah, the permitting process is certainly far from free these days, since we have to hire a third-party processor to do it. So we would have to be investing money with the hope that we could find funding for the main project in order to have shovel-ready projects. Mr.
Yeah.
Town Manager, your hand is up. Do you have a comment?
I do, Mr. Mayor. We can look into what the actual holdup is, as Mr. Shelton suggested. If I'm recalling this correctly, it's not just the installation cost or in a slab type of a thing. If it was just that, I would suggest to the council that we find some money to assist and having that done. But I think part of the county's program with Capital Bike Share is that I believe there's some operating cost as well that goes into this. So I don't think it's just a one-time cost. And we'll verify that with the county, but I think there's some ongoing costs that the county's absorbing.
And Mr. Town Manager, my memory of this is that the council's main involvement was in suggesting the location for this, that we did not have a strong advocacy part in getting the program up and running. We were certainly supportive of it, but we were asked, they had wanted to put it in a particular location, and we suggested this as an alternate, and they accepted it, but didn't promise a timescale at that time of when it would actually happen.
That's my recollection as well, Mr. Mayor, and that's been consistent since the program started several years ago.
Mhm.
The town did push pretty hard to see a station east of the river.
Mhm. Understood. Okay, so I will expect an update on that from staff soon. And please, if you get it soon, send an email to the entire council. And otherwise, we can hear about it perhaps at the October 4th meeting, October 2nd meeting. Okay, any other items of new business or unfinished business or anything else for that matter? It's looking awfully quiet. I'm hearing the waves lapping of the lake outside my window, so I'm going to get back to my vacation. And thank you all for a very interesting and productive meeting. It was great to have discussions and bring up new topics and move things forward. So see you all in about approximately 2 weeks. Take care.
Take care.
Till then, take care.
Good care. Good night.